Good evening and welcome to the Sacramento County Fentanyl Awareness Town Hall. My name is Lori Miller and I'm the Division Manager for Sacramento County Department of Health Services, Substance Use Prevention and Treatment Unit, and I will be your moderator tonight. This event is being live streamed on YouTube and will be recorded and available for future viewing. I want to first thank our panel guests and you, our attendees, for tuning in tonight. So let's begin. We are currently in a fentanyl crisis. Fentanyl is not new and has been around a very long time. It is a potent and powerful synthetic opioid approved by the Federal Drug Administration for pain relief. It is approximately 100 times more potent than morphine and 50 times more potent than heroin. Fentanyl poisoning and other opioid overdose is now considered a local and national emergency. Fentanyl has become an urgent threat to Sacramento. It is widely available and increasingly lethal. A very small amount can be deadly. We have seen too many lives lost from those that were poisoned and died from counterfeit pills laced or replaced with fentanyl to people who use or struggle with opioids on a daily basis and died of an overdose. All of these lives mattered. They have faces and names and families that miss them. We are here tonight to talk about this alarming and concerning issue and arm our community with information and resources. We have convened a panel of health officials, elected officials, law enforcement, and parents who will share some brief remarks with you in hopes of raising awareness and preventing future loss of Sacramento County residents. The goal of this town hall is to help our community and save lives. Here are some messages we want you to leave with tonight. We want you to be informed about the dangers of fentanyl and counterfeit pills and what you can say to your loved ones who may be at risk. We want you to be aware that one pill can kill you. Drug experimentation is no longer safe. And for those people currently using substances, we want you to also be safe, follow safe practices, and know where to access harm reduction, substance use, and mental health treatment resources. And finally, Sacramento County will continue to emphasize prevention, public awareness, public health, and public safety. Given the amount of lives lost, it is critical to come together as a community, collectively heal, and find solutions. We will hear brief remarks from each of our panelists and then move into public question and answer period. We will now begin our first panelist. I would like to introduce Anne Marie Schubert, District Attorney for Sacramento.
Thank you so much, Lori. I appreciate it very much. And thanks to all the panelists. And thank you to everybody that has tuned in tonight to this really critical town hall. And we hope people walk away with it with some information that allows them to act now. I want to take a second just to thank Sacramento County Board of Supervisors, County Executive Ann Edwards, Supervisors Kennedy and Supervisor Desmond, as well as Department of Health Services for partnering with us on such an important issue. There is no question that one only needs to sit with a family member or to hear their stories of the devastating impact of what happens when somebody loses their life to fentanyl. In the last couple of days, I would say that I have either read a story, been texted a story, heard a story on the news about the impact of fentanyl across not just Sacramento County, but really across the state. Just today, I read a story about 2 infants in Kern County that had been near overdoses of fentanyl because they had been exposed to it. I want to just take a few minutes to talk about the problem that we see here in Sacramento and why we are all coming together to really raise awareness so that we can all save lives. And with that, I'd like to just ask Chris if you can share the screen on what we're seeing here in Sacramento County. As Lori said, we cannot oversee the fact that we are in an epidemic. One of the most challenging things that I think we are seeing is that we need people to understand it and we need people to help us prevent it, and it is preventable. But just here in Sacramento County, I think what was the most alarming to me when I first started to look into what's happening here is the fact that we have seen more fentanyl involved deaths than we have seen homicides with the use of a gun. That is a staggering statistic. So 198 fentanyl related deaths from January 2020 until December 9th of 2021. And so the next slide, I think what's also important for folks to understand is it hits all different types of demographics. It hits all different kinds of ages. You are not immune by your zip code, your race, your ethnicity, anything. We have seen this, and it is, again, devastating families across our community. I'm particularly concerned that we're seeing a high number, 15% under the age of 21, that are dying as a result of this poison. Just yesterday, I saw a story about a young teenager charged with the death of a 13-year-old in Santa Clara County. It is hitting all different ages and groups. Next slide, Chris. These are some things that I think are critically important, and I want to also, at the end of this, we're going to introduce our supervising criminalist at our crime lab that oversees much of this and is really one of the folks that sounded the alarm to us here at the DA's office, and that's Craig Trebold. In 2021, our crime lab found that 99% of the most common street pill that was being sent into our lab, oxycodone, was in fact fake. Okay, so law enforcement takes these pills off the streets. People think it's oxycodone, and the fact is it's fake. And 99% of those fake pills contained fentanyl. That is extremely alarming. The other thing that we're starting to see is the amount that is being taken off the streets by law enforcement and submitted to our crime lab. And just remember, what's submitted to our crime lab is only a fraction of what's really out there. So in 2020, 622 pills were taken off the streets that contain fentanyl. That is enough to kill possibly more than 44,000 people. So that's 622. Again, that's just what was submitted. Then we go to 2021, 165,660 pills. That is astronomical increase. That's enough to kill more than 182,000 adults. So that is why we're here tonight to talk about the dangers. And then what are we doing from our office point of view? Well, we're obviously incredibly proud to be partnering with Department of Health Services to try to tackle this issue. We're working both in the courtroom as a DA's office, where we are advising people, if you sell fentanyl, if you're distributing something that has fentanyl, if you're manufacturing something that has fentanyl, and you are then convicted of that, we're going to give you an advisement. That is that if you choose to continue this bad behavior and you kill somebody, then you can be charged not just with something like manslaughter, but you can conceivably be charged with murder. It's a very serious consequence, but these consequences are serious to the people that are losing their lives. And then secondly, just as important, if not perhaps more, is prevention. As Lori's mentioned this at the beginning, we cannot solve this problem alone. We need the community to come together. This is why we're doing things like town halls, our fentanyl awareness campaigns, our PSAs, public service announcements. We're working with our schools. We're working with all of our community partners to do everything we can do to help save lives. But at the end of the day, I will say this, we cannot do it without your help. And so for those of you that have joined in today, please join our efforts. Please tell your friends and your family, and please listen to the stories and the cases that you're going to hear about, because these are human lives that are being lost. So thank you so much, Lori. I appreciate your willingness to do this.
Thank you. Our next panelist is Philip A. Talbert, Acting U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of California.
Thanks, Lori. I'm so happy to be here and welcome everybody to this important program. I just want to say thank you to Sacramento County and to Sacramento County District Attorney Schubert for putting on this important program. My office, the U.S. Attorney's Office, is responsible for about half of California, 34 counties stretching from the Oregon border down to Kern County, Bakersfield in the south, pretty much all of the Sierra Mountain areas and the Central Valley. And I can say, as a representative of the United States government, the overdose crisis in the United States has reached a devastating new height. 100,000 people died last year from overdoses. Almost 2/3 of the overdoses were caused by fentanyl. Here in California, according to the California Overdose Surveillance Dashboard, in 2020, almost 4,000 people died of a fentanyl overdose. The crisis is being driven by the Mexican drug cartels. They're using chemicals from China and India to produce fentanyl in Mexican laboratories, then shipping powder fentanyl and counterfeit pills, often fake M30 oxycodone pills, to the United States for sale. Over the last few years, the cartels have literally flooded our country with fentanyl. Last year, DEA seized 15,000 pounds of fentanyl, enough to supply 440 million lethal doses. That's enough fentanyl to kill every American. And as District Attorney Schubert pointed out, that's only the amount that gets seized and analyzed. That's not the amount that's actually out there in the street. How did we get here? Several years ago, fentanyl was just arriving in small amounts in the US for sale on the black market. In our area, fentanyl use hit the public consciousness in 2016 when over 50 people overdosed on fake pills and 14 of them died here in the Sacramento County area. Since then, the illicit supply of fentanyl in both powder form and in counterfeit pill form has increased year over year, leading to increases in reported overdoses and overdose deaths. The same Mexican drug cartels that supply our country with massive amounts of methamphetamine are now distributing fentanyl as another product in their marketing lineup. What we're seeing is that the cartels and their distribution systems in the United States are poly-drug. They supply what meets the demand, and a lot of demand is now for fentanyl. And what's great for the cartels is there's a lot of profit to be made off of fentanyl. It's relatively cheap to buy overseas, about $3,000 to $5,000 for a kilogram. That 1 kilogram can be used to make 500,000 fake pills, which when sold in the US can earn upwards of $1.5 million. And the cartels already have the distribution systems in place for methamphetamine that they can use to distribute fentanyl, leading to a greater percentage of that revenue being pure profit. The fake pills look the same as prescription pills, but they're not made in a legitimate drug company's manufacturing lab with controls and oversight. Pressing pills containing fentanyl is inexact. On average, while a fake pill contains 1.8 milligrams of fentanyl on average, DEA's labs have shown that the amount of fentanyl can range from as low as 0.02 milligrams to as high as 5.1 milligrams. About 2 milligrams of fentanyl is a potentially lethal dose, though what is lethal to one person might be higher or lower than to another person. DEA laboratory analysis has shown that today, 4 out of 10 fake pills containing fentanyl contain a potentially lethal dose. That's 4 out of 10. Distribution networks are thriving in the illicit market for fake pills. Pills don't have the same stigma associated with other drugs like meth and heroin. Distributors use social media platforms to entice new users to buy pills. During a pandemic, when people feel isolated, is a great time to find new users, particularly when they cut across all demographics. Historically, my office works with the DEA, FBI, Homeland Security investigations, and other federal and local law enforcement agencies and task forces to combat large-scale drug trafficking in and through our 34 counties. We work with our law enforcement partners to investigate, disrupt, and dismantle the criminal networks that are bringing drugs into our district and either distributing them here or transporting them across the United States. Traditionally, the Eastern District of California, which we are home to, is a transshipment district. Drugs travel on I-5 and Highway 99 north, and then on I-80 and 50 across the country. I'm a career prosecutor, and for years my focus was on prosecuting illegal drug trafficking cases in federal court, mainly involving methamphetamine. But I'm the first one to tell you that we're not going to prosecute our way out of this problem. That's why awareness events like today's program and prevention and treatment efforts are vital to combating what we must consider to be a public health crisis in our country. Thank you, and I look forward to the rest of today's program.
Thank you, U.S. Attorney Talbert. Our next panelist is Supervisor Patrick Kennedy, Sacramento County Board of Supervisors, District 2.
Thank you very much. And I have to start by saying how much I admire and appreciate District Attorney Anne Marie Schubert for really making this an issue for Sacramento County at the forefront of what we're doing. This is a scourge on our society. When I hear numbers like 182,000 people could be killed just on what we seized last year, and the trajectory of the number and the proliferation of these pills coming on the market is just going up exponentially. this is a crisis. This is not a problem. It's a crisis. And we as a county are committed, again, with, the district attorney's leadership, but we as a board are committed to dealing with this as the crisis that it is. It goes across department lines, as you will hear later from Director Katari, that we are dealing with this on many levels. First of all, we have to educate. There are so many people that fall victim to fentanyl who had no idea that they were taking fentanyl. They thought they were taking recreational drugs. They thought they were taking antidepressants. And it turns out that they were taking something that could kill not only them, but could kill their entire block. This is something that we have to keep at the forefront. I never thought I would say that we see something on the street now that is as dangerous as meth. I led the charge to fight the pharmaceutical companies that were, I think, harming our public by pushing OxyContin and other drugs in a way that was, I think, quite frankly, immoral. Now we're at a case in which we've gone beyond that. So as a county, we need to educate, and we need to also help those that are actually addicted through their own means or others, and help them get off of that cycle of addiction. But still, we cannot do enough to educate, particularly our children. If our schools are not talking about fentanyl now, it's a crime. And we need to, as a community, reach out to our schools and make sure that our kids realize that that pill that you're taking, that your friend passed on to you, that you got online, is not in fact something that will not only make you not feel better, but will kill you. Then we are committing a crime to our children. We have to get in with education and let the public know that this is something that is killing our community. So with that, again, thank you, DA Schubert, and thank you to the U.S. Attorney. I appreciate your words and your efforts here. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Kennedy. Our next panelist is Supervisor Rich Desmond, Sacramento County Board of Supervisors, District 3.
Thank you very much, Lori. And I want to echo a lot of the sentiments from my colleague, Supervisor Kennedy. My prior career before coming on the board was as a California Highway Patrol officer for 4 years. And I had direct experience with officers who were exposed to fentanyl and nearly lost their lives and would have if a medic wasn't close by with Narcan to treat the officer immediately. That was a lot of my experience, coming into the board. Since coming onto the board and since learning more from our district attorney, Anne-Marie Schubert, and our Department of Health Services, and also with joining Patrick Kennedy at a fentanyl awareness safety fair, I believe that was a couple months ago. It is absolutely heartbreaking to hear the stories of folks, and I know we're going to hear from some of the families of the victims this evening. It is amazing how these kids, these victims, like our district attorney said, across the spectrum, both geographically, in terms of demographics throughout the county, income level. This is something that touches so many people because it is so insidious. Addiction from illicit or overdoses from illicit substances is an absolute public health crisis. But with fentanyl, because of the characteristics that Supervisor Kennedy mentioned with these kids, almost every one of these stories, they're kids who had no idea what they were taking. They thought they were just taking a prescription medication that might make them feel better, but that was otherwise safe. And something that District Attorney Anne-Marie Schubert and I have spoken about before is we look at the deaths that have been caused from fentanyl. What we don't know is how many close calls there have been, and there have been so many. Those numbers could easily be doubled or tripled if there wasn't intervention there right away. So I am very happy to be here tonight. I'm very happy that our board, Sacramento County Board, Supervisor Kennedy and I and our three colleagues came together November 2nd, shortly after we heard from the DA's office about this effort to educate the public. We passed a resolution in Sacramento County committing to our support for these educational efforts, because one pill can kill, and we need to be just aggressive about getting the word out and educating the public every way, every possibility, every chance we have to make sure they know that this is out there and the dangers that it's causing. And I'm just very thankful to be a part of the discussion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Desmond. Our next panelist is Siobhan Katari, Director of Health Services, Sacramento County.
Thank you, Lori. I'd like to just take this opportunity, first of all, to show my appreciation for both District Attorney Schubert and her team, for our local Board of Supervisors for their commitment and support to these efforts, as well as to my own team at the Department of Health Services, our substance use prevention and treatment team, who have really been showing their leadership and their commitment to addressing the fentanyl crisis here in Sacramento County. Our hearts and our support go out to the families who have been impacted and who have lost loved ones as a result of this crisis. We are with you and we are here to support you. We're also committed to continuing our work to address the stigma related to addiction. We want to tear down barriers to accessing treatment and care. And I'm happy to say that our team has worked diligently over the past several years to build a very responsive continuum of treatment and care for both individuals and families who struggle with addiction. And we will continue to advocate for more care, continue to advocate for more dollars at the state and federal level to make sure that we have the resources we need to address this crisis. And so I thank you for letting me participate tonight.
Thank you, Siobhan. Our next panelist is Captain Lawrence Wang with the Sacramento Fire Department.
Thank you, Lori. Good evening, everyone. Again, thank you very much for involving the fire department in this event. I am a fire captain with the Sacramento Fire Department, but I've also been a paramedic since 2003. And in terms of what we see in the field, we've definitely seen an increase in opiate-related overdoses, more so in the last 5 years than in my first 14. So again, thank you very much for having me out here today, and I look forward to doing a little demonstration for everyone here.
Thank you, Captain Wang. Our next panelists are Laura and Chris Didier, parents of Zachary Didier, forever 17.
Thank you, and thank you, Anne-Marie Schubert and her team for the opportunity for us to speak tonight. My name is Chris Didier. I'm Zach's father.
I'm Laura Didier, Zach's mom.
And many of you already know the story, but Zach is a victim of fraud and was killed 13 months ago today from what we call fentanyl poisoning. He had no real history of substance use, so I do not consider him a category of a person who overdosed, having struggled with substance use. Zach was an extremely brilliant, intelligent, very active high school senior at Whitney High School here in Rockland, California. And he was successful. He had sustained a near perfect academic record all throughout his years of schooling. He was a recognized multi-sport athlete in soccer and in track. He was active in scouting. He was working toward his Eagle rank and was involved in the Whitney Theater program, and he was self-taught a number of musical instruments. After dying, we learned Zach was accepted into 5 UCs, including UCLA, with goals to attend Stanford. So he's a very high caliber young man that was firing on all 8 cylinders, doing well. And when we discovered Zach no longer with us, we were completely confounded and confused and shocked. Honestly, it felt like we were just hit with the Mack truck, and it was confusing. We later learned that a drug dealer contacted Zach and a friend at our mall. They had communicated earlier that day through Snapchat, Zach had no affiliation or relationship in the past, and they were given what they were told was a Percocet pill. Toxicology report later confirmed that there was no Percocet in Zach's system, just simply a lethal amount of fentanyl was in his system. And it was something that completely just destroyed our family. It shattered our family, our friends, Zach's friends, and our community, and we were in shock. As DEA Administrator and Milgram had mentioned, about 20 million counterfeit pills were seized, and as U.S. Attorney Talbert mentioned, roughly 40% of those pills are considered lethal. That the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol seized over 15,000 pounds of fentanyl products to generate roughly 440 billion lethal doses, enough to kill every American. Well, a senior operations manager with U.S. Customs and Border Patrol estimates roughly 5% is what's being seized. So that could infer that there's 8.5, almost 8.5 billion lethal doses that are in the streets in our country right now. That's more than enough to kill every human on this planet. And it's right outside our doors. So Laura and I are wanting to work along with several other professionals like you and other families, and we're wanting to take action and make a positive impact.
So once, we found him dead here in our home. There were no drugs in his room, no injury to his body. So like Chris said, we were very confused what could have stolen our son's life. Once we were apprised of what had happened, we did a deep dive into this. It was not something we had knowledge of. There weren't these wonderful public awareness events happening yet. None of Zach's friends knew what had happened. They were not aware of this counterfeit pill situation. So we sat down as a family. We have 2 older kids, and we said, we want to warn our community. We want to put a face to this crisis. We want people to understand that it's your next door neighbor. It's the person you sit next to at church. It could be any family. So pretty quickly, once we went public, we got connected with a nonprofit organization started by another grieving couple who had lost their 22-year-old son. It's called Song for Charlie. The website is songforcharlie.org, and they have tremendous educational materials on there. So we are in partnership with them. We volunteer our time. We are in schools. Just 2 nights ago, we were Zooming with middle school parents from Folsom Middle School. We'll be at Folsom High School later in February. We'll be in El Dorado County. We've been at Zach's High School. We just get in front of parents. We get in front of kids. We share Zach's story. And we feel it's having the impact that we want it to have. And so these other children are aware of what they're up against out there. And these drug dealers are in their pocket, on their cell phone, and they're taking advantage of, our naive young people who, as has been mentioned before, they think they're getting a Xanax or a Percocet or an Oxy, and they're being deceived to their death. So we're very grateful for the level of commitment from the community to help us families. We're connected with so many families all throughout the state. We are not the only activist parents. There are parents in every county of our great state trying to educate young people. So I would highly recommend, if there are parents out there, young people out there, to go to songforcharlie.org and view the videos and the materials that are there. If you want us to come and do presentations in your schools, please reach out to us. The DA's office has all of our contact information, and we will go anywhere where we're invited to share this information. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris and Laura. We will now move into our public question and answer period, and joining us, additional panelists that will be joining us this evening are Craig Trebold, Supervising Criminalist with the Sacramento County District Attorney's Office Crime Lab, and Dr. Andrew Mendonça, who is the Health Program Manager for Sacramento County Health Services Substance Use Prevention and Treatment, and also a clinical psychologist. So I think what we'll do is we'll start with Captain Lawrence Wang in order for him to provide us a demonstration of how to utilize Narcan.
All right, good evening. So what we have some of these nasal Narcan administrators. The whole idea of these is it gives you a 4 milligram dose of naloxone, which counteracts the opiates in your system. And what it does is it mists it. So it's not a direct injection. Us as paramedics, we can give it as a shot in your veins or a shot in your muscle. Worst case scenario for us is we can use these misters. We have similar types in our ambulances and our fire engines and trucks, and it mists it into your nose for rapid absorption. So these are the not trainers, but these are the medications that I was given to demonstrate. Number one thing you want to do is when you approach somebody is you want to look out for your own safety. One of the big indications of giving Narcan is an unconscious person that's either not breathing or breathing really, really slow. So you don't want to just go up there and get into their face and stick this up their nose, because they might be sleeping, there might be something else going on, and we don't want you to get hurt. So tap them on the feet, call them out. If you know their name, call their name. Then you kind of work your way up and take a look at the overall picture. Some of the key indicators is anybody that's blue, pale, slow breathing 4 to 6 times a minute, and that's really, really slow, or not breathing at all. Snoring respirations, where every time they take a breath, it sounds like they're taking a big snore. Those are indicators that that we would use for an opiate overdose. So for you guys out there, if you guys have these, what you do is once you've established that they're unconscious, unresponsive, and possibly in an opiate overdose situation, you're going to open up this packet. You guys all can see. When you take out this little white plunger, you want to be careful not to push this little red plunger. This red plunger is attached, but once you push it, that's going to start administering the medication. So you don't want to put your thumb on the applicator until you're ready to give it. When you're ready to give it, you're going to stick it in the nose. Sometimes they might have a bloody nose. You want to find the one that's most open or the least amount of blood. You're going to stick it straight back into the nose. This is a CPR dummy, so the nose is really, really small, but you're going to stick it straight back. Don't stick it straight up, because you're just going to hit the roof of their nose. Stick it straight back as far as it's going to go. And then with your finger on the plunger, you're just going to push it as hard and as fast as you can. The faster you push this medication, the more it's going to mist. If you push it in real slow, it might drip and it's not going to get the effect that you're going to want. After you've given the medication, you want to step back. You obviously want to make sure you call 911 if you haven't done so already, and you're going to wait. If after 2 or 3 minutes there's still no change and they're still not breathing, or the respirations are still slow, you can give another one in the other nose. And then basically from there, like I said, you want to make sure you contact 911, because that's what's going to that's when we're going to take them to the hospital and get them definitive care. Some of the things you want to watch out for is once you give this and they wake up and they say, no, I'm okay, and they start walking away, I would still highly recommend that you call 911, because depending on how much narcotics they have in their system, this Narcan could be short acting. So they can get up, walk around for a few minutes, turn a corner, and then basically go unconscious again. So you want to make sure you have something coming to be able to help them in the long term. And so that's pretty much it for my demonstration, and I'll answer any questions anybody has in terms of giving these.
Thank you, Captain Wang. We'll wait for questions regarding that and move to a couple of questions that we have from our viewers. The first question has to do with Anne Marie's presentation. So DA Schubert, Were your stats broken out any further by gender, race, or age?
If Chris can show I think it's the second slide, we do have it broken down by age group. That's about the most that we can tell you is just the age group. We get the data from our coroner's office. So Chris, if you can show them, I think it's the second slide, if you don't mind. You there, Chris?
1 second.
Okay, thank you. So the yellow represents the homicides by gun violence, I believe, and the blue represents the fentanyl. So what you can see is that with these age groups, you're seeing a lot of, the numbers that are in the mix here, but that's about the most of the data that I can give you at this point. Whoever asked that question, it's a good question though.
Thank you, DA Schubert. Another question from our audience is any data, sorry, I lost it. Any data on the accountability of American pharmaceutical companies that have led to this opioid crisis?
I don't know if Supervisor Kennedy could answer that. Just, I know the county took some lead efforts in the litigation, I think, on suing the opioid manufacturers, as well as the state, I think, also did that.
Yes, the county actually joined counties throughout the country in several class action lawsuits actually against 5 major pharmaceutical companies, many of which are in the process of settling and many of which will come. The settlements will not result in just a check being written to counties or other jurisdictions. It will actually result in programs to help those who have become addicted because of the practices of the pharmaceutical companies. So this isn't something that's going to go into the general fund. This is something that's going to go directly toward the problem that they have created and solving it.
Thank you, Supervisor Kennedy. Let's move back to a question in regards to Narcan. Where can the public receive Narcan? So I'll turn that over to Dr. Mendonça. I'm not hearing him, so I will go ahead and share. The public can receive Narcan in a variety of different ways. If you're out in the community, we have some harm reduction organizations that distribute both Narcan and fentanyl test strips. We also, if you're an organization, you can apply through the naloxone distribution project through the Department of Healthcare Services and receive larger doses of Narcan. And you can also get Narcan through your doctor, a prescription from your doctor. And whether or not you have a prescription or not, you can receive it through a pharmacy. Okay, next question. Sacramento area, are there resources in the Sacramento area for naloxone training and acquisition for those that work in high-risk populations? So if Dr. Mendonça is on the line, if you'd like to respond to that.
Sure. There's a link that was just put into the chat from the district attorney's office. That link goes directly to how to order naloxone and how to acquire that. That reversal agent, as Lori was just mentioning. We have a lot of places that provide harm reduction and other services that can be helpful to address this question. I will put that link in the chat as well.
Thank you, Dr. Mendonça. And I'm going to go back to Captain Wang for a moment. Additional questions in regards to Narcan. Can Narcan be harmful? Can it hurt the person who receives it?
No, the only real contraindication, meaning the only reason why you wouldn't want to give Narcan is if you know the person's allergic to Narcan. And in most situations, especially when we go out on calls, we don't know anything about the person. So we just end up giving it. If anything, it'll just create a mild allergic reaction, but that's usually dealt with on the hospital side. So like I said, the only real contraindication is if if you have a family member that is doing this and is allergic to Narcan, then that could be something that needs to be addressed. But it's very, very, it's a small percentage. It's very, very small.
Thank you, Captain Wing. And could you also respond to an additional question? If a person was to help somebody that is experiencing an overdose, would they be liable? Would they get in any kind of trouble? And can you speak to the Good Samaritan law?
Okay, so the Good Samaritan law protects the average public person when they're rendering aid without compensation. Now the key is without compensation. So the example that I always use for a Good Samaritan law is you see a car accident in front of you and the car's on fire. You go and you reach and you pull the person out and you save their life. But then in the process, you break their neck, and then now they want to sue you. Well, the Good Samaritan law protects you from that because you were acting in good faith, trying to help a member of the public. And the part about compensation is me. I'm a firefighter, and I can't just do that when we go out on calls. I'm held to a higher standard. So the Good Samaritan law doesn't protect people that are doing it for money or for jobs. So if you were to do this in the public, and something happens, you wouldn't be liable for it. On the other end too, just like how I kind of introduced it, is it also doesn't protect you. So if you get up, really, really close to somebody's face and you shove this in their nose and you spray it and they come out and they swing and they take a hit at you, you can't sue them because they didn't know what was going on. So it kind of goes both ways. But if you're acting in the best interest, then you're really not held liable, so long as you're not doing it for money, like I said in the beginning.
Thank you. Next question to Mr. Treebold from our Sacramento County District Attorney's Crime Lab. What is the Crime Lab seeing in terms of trends, and how can you tell if a pill is fake or counterfeit or contains fentanyl?
I want to start off by saying that I appreciate the opportunity to be involved in this, and I really want to thank everybody for their participation. So at the Crime Lab, we've really seen a dramatic increase in the amount of fentanyl coming into the laboratory, both in our toxicology section and in our seized drug section. And that's really been true over the last 18 to 24 months. And starting in about 2020, as Anne-Marie mentioned in her introductory remarks, we started seeing an increase in the counterfeit pills that come in looking like pharmaceutical oxycodone pills, but when we would test them, they would actually just contain fentanyl. And so, as Anne-Marie mentioned, in 2020, we had tested over 600 of those pills, and then in 2021, that number exploded to over 165,000 pills. Considering that potentially every single one of those is a lethal dose, that is, a huge threat to our community. But we're not just seeing counterfeit pills. We are seeing fentanyl come in powders and other solid forms. We're also seeing it mixed with other drugs. So we're seeing it mixed with methamphetamine, with cocaine, with heroin. It's really just been shocking to us at the lab how much fentanyl has kind of just taken over everything that we're seeing.
Great, thank you for your response. Next question for Director Katari. What services and supports are in place at the county level? And can you speak to the intersection of this issue between behavioral health services, public health, and other county departments?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. Am I on now, Lori? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks for the question. So Sacramento County collaborates with many providers throughout the community. And as I've mentioned before, we have a continuum of care, a continuum of services and supports and treatment that we provide for the community. And we make that accessible. And so going to our website, Sacramento County website, you can gain access to that kind of treatment. Our team has also worked to establish easy pathways to receiving medication-assisted treatment, and that can be accessed immediately for those who need it. Our department also partners with the harm reduction organizations that you heard about tonight in efforts to get Narcan out into the community and in efforts to really raise awareness so that we can ensure that we're all ready to address this crisis when we see it. We also partner with the schools, as has been discussed earlier, that's starting to educate youth very young, starting to educate parents so we know what to look for and we can help our kids is going to be one of our most important strategies. And we do that, and we will continue to do more of that. Additionally, we operate youth coalitions and opioid coalitions to ensure that we're hearing from those folks who are directly impacted, those youth who are directly impacted, lifting up their voices to help us find the best solutions possible. And then in partnership with the district attorney's office, we are supporting the fentanyl awareness campaign and events such as this. You know, as has been described on this call tonight, fentanyl is very much a public health crisis, and we do see the nexus. And our ability to educate healthcare professionals, our ability to take a multi-prong approach, and that includes a law enforcement approach as well as a treatment approach, is going to be very important to addressing this public health crisis. And I think if we've learned one very important lesson during the COVID pandemic, it's been that during a public health crisis, it does take a whole community approach to address a crisis such as this. So I've been very heartened to see our partners come together and really take this very seriously so that we can find solutions that work for Sacramento County. When we see a public health crisis, we know that it takes a toll on a community. It takes an economic toll. It takes a toll on families. It takes a toll on the health of individuals and of families. And that's why we have to take a whole community approach to addressing this. And I feel really proud of the work that our team's done to do that. Thanks.
Thank you. Next question is for Laura and Chris Didier, our parents. How do you talk to your kids about safety and the dangers of fentanyl? Can this be prevented? And what would you want to say to other parents?
Laura, do you want to start?
Yeah, I would just say that this is a conversation that truly needs to happen in every household, starting minimum middle school. With Zach, you know, we really weren't afforded warning signs. He was on a great path. Our older two kids had never experimented or used substances. So we were very, very blindsided. And unfortunately with fentanyl, that's how it can happen. It can happen that fast. We may not get that, you know, it used to be, you could see those signs if your child was starting to struggle with substances and you would have opportunities to intervene. But now it's a minefield out there. So I would say to parents that even, you know, if you don't see any kind of warning signs, or you think, oh, my kid would never do that, just think back to the kinds of risks you took as a kid, or the kind, you know, when you might have succumbed to some peer pressure or tried something, but now the risks are exponentially worse. So just sit down, have that conversation, make sure they understand that if they are struggling in any way, or they have a curiosity about something, that they understand that what they may think is the safer way to experiment because they think it's a name brand pharmaceutical pill, if they're getting that through social media, it's actually the most dangerous way for them to experiment. So just being really, really upfront about this, making sure that they understand if they are struggling with something, that they know where their safe spaces are to go with that, whether it's a coach or a parent, you know, or some kind of a teacher, and that if they do need any kind of help, to make sure they understand, go through the proper channels, because we now are part of this really large, it's tragically large community of parents who have lost kids to these fake pills. And our stories are, range from experimentation, self-medication, and kids we just need them all to know that the people that are operating on social media are lying to them. And these pills are absolutely fake. And just make sure that they know that, even if you don't think, we never would have thought that this was something that would have taken our son's life. I wish we had known to have that conversation with him, but we can't warn our kids about dangers that we don't know exist. We didn't know there were drug dealers on Snapchat. We didn't know there were fake pills that were deadly out on the street that he could just order right up. So everybody needs to have this conversation in their home.
I'd like to add that in our advocacy work with a number of other parents, one of the biggest challenges has been the stigma that can get connected to our message. And when there's a stigma, people tend to think that, they compartmentalize, oh, that's the drug problem, that won't happen to me, not my family, not my kid. And that's the problem, that's the challenge, because the meaning of the message is lost. Unfortunately, addiction kind of gets related to our stories, and then potentially victim shaming creeps in, and that's not fair to our kids. So what we really truly believe in is just have an honest sit down talk, show them media, show them the statistics that the DEA, that the CBP, and that CDC are reporting. And these numbers are so ridiculously out of control, to just say, guys, here's what's going on. We may have a better traction with connecting to our kids when you don't necessarily say, hey, don't do this or do that, but to just let them know. They're very informed and they're very connected, and they're very savvy. So if instead just say, here's the danger, there's a minefield here now, and you take one step, one time, even half a pill can kill 3 grown adults. And that's never been like that. Our landscape is very different than in the past. And so this is, I think, a really important time. I also recommend to get to know their friends and talk to those parents, and collaborate with all of the parents and other players on the soccer team or whatever groups their friend groups are, and share all of the media that you come across and on any of the media that we have presented. And then lastly, we forgot to mention, and maybe we did, the information, media, flyers, and programs that are found on songforcharlie.org is free to the public and for schools and for teachers. There's school curriculum in there and other really good informational videos. So we just wanted to make sure that
very
got
good
out
explainer videos. And then one last thing I would say is also to make sure that your kids understand that no 2 counterfeit pills are alike.
Right.
So when you're talking to them, to make sure they understand there's no consistency. So if you think in your head, well, I know my buddy tried one last week, he's fine. They're exaggerating this. Make sure they understand every pill is unique. We know Zach had tried at least one other time a pill, but right away, 48 hours later, another pill ended his life. So just make sure, because you know how kids are, they talk to each other. Someone might say, oh, it's not as bad as they say, I tried one of those pills. Well, that one may barely have had fentanyl, but the next one you get might have enough to kill 5 people.
It's Russian roulette, as one grieving mom calls it, Russian pillette. And with the 40 to 42% chances of it being lethal, it's playing Russian roulette with not 1 bullet, but 2 or even 3 bullets in a chamber or in a barrel of gun. And no one should be taking those kinds of risks. And what's sad is these kids don't know they're playing roulette like that. Yeah. So just let them know the truth.
Thank you. Next couple of questions are for Dr. Andrew Mendonça. What are the signs and symptoms of fentanyl poisoning or overdose?
Great. Thank you so much, Lori. It's a really good question. It's one that I get asked quite a bit in my work out in the community. So some of the signs and symptoms, really the biggest thing that I like to tell parents is, you know your kids pretty well, right? And when kids start to act different, A lot of times, especially those of us that are parents, we know when something's not quite right. Well, really, I tell people is really listen to your gut. Try to, at that point, if you feel like something's not right, start to collect some more data, start to ask questions, start to really engage with your kids, with your kids' friends, if they're close with you. But some of the telltale signs that we really want to make sure you're looking out for are things like withdrawal, mood swings, secretive behavior. Let's say your kid or your kids used to be very open, used to talk about things, how school was, and they're extremely secretive. They're extremely closed off. Emotional changes. Now we know that a lot of times for teens, this isn't uncommon, right? There's, sometimes kids can have ups and down days, but if you start to see some really significant emotional changes where there's profound depression, profound anxiety, profound episodes of anger, again, this is just one of those other symptoms you want to start to be watching out for. There's not one symptom or kind of one silver bullet that really speaks to your child's using drugs, but more of, the more of these that you have, the more likely is that there might be a problem that you want to address or talk to your kids about. Dropping old friends and getting new friends. Another one. Sleeping more than usual. That can be a sign. Breaking rules, high risk or risk-taking behavior. That can be also an indication that there might be something going on. And like our fire captain mentioned earlier, is like bloody noses. Any kinds of like physical trauma that you're like not sure why or how that happened, bloody noses or broken bones or scrapes or things like that, where you're like, how does this happen? Well, it could be that, folks are passing out and hitting the ground or hitting their head and causing some kind of trauma or some kind of physical injury. But really, what a lot of people, don't understand is that a lot of the symptoms that we see with folks that are struggling with drug use or drug addiction are the same kind of symptoms that we see for folks that are struggling with mental health issues. And so that's really oftentimes, folks that are struggling with substance abuse, they're also struggling with a co-occurring or kind of at the same time, some mental health stuff. So you also want to be looking out for these symptoms because, again, it could be indicative of someone going through a depression or an anxiety, and they could be self-medicating with these drugs in hopes to try to get their mental health needs met.
Thank you, Dr. Mendonça.
Can I add one thing to that? So the other symptoms are irritability that's not normal. And if they're actively reacting to fentanyl, there could be extreme fatigue and loud snoring. And if you see something like that, that might be your only sign something is going on and you may only have minutes. So for more of an immediate type of reaction, that's something to also pay attention to.
And either Laura, Chris, or Dr. Mendonça, how would you talk to somebody who may be at risk for overdose or struggling with mental health or substance use? How would you engage them?
Didier, did you want to take a stab at this first? Oh, okay. Looks like over to me. Yeah, the first thing that again, what we want to make sure that we're not doing is stigmatizing. So really having that conversation, meeting the child or the kid where they're at, having that conversation, open dialogue, non-judgmental, what's going on? What do you, what's going on with you? What do you need? Seems like you're going through some trouble. Really kind of approach it as kind of a fact gathering. And I'm interested in wanting to know how I can help you, what's going on with you. Not really this coming in like, we need to know if you're using drugs because I don't tolerate drugs in my house. Things like that. Again, it's a very closed off language approach. So your kids aren't likely wanting to share. They're not going to want to talk about it. So more of like, hey, if you have a problem, it's okay. Let's get you the help that you need. There's a lot of kids in your age group that are doing drugs. And if you're one of those, let's get you the help that you need. Let's get you what you need to make sure that you don't make a mistake that's going to, harm yourself, harm your family, harm your future or your life. And really coming at it like that, like, here, I'm here to support you. I'm here to get you through whatever you're going through. And sometimes you might find out that it's a substance abuse, might be if someone's just self-medicating, someone that's just experimenting, someone has just some mental health issues they're going through in their life. And maybe that's all that's really going on. And they need some help with how to access mental health care as well. So really, going in there with an open mind, going in there with, I want to get as much information as I can because I just want to help you. Didier, is anything you wanted to add to that? I know you guys do a lot of education to parents. So
I really like that answer. That was very well articulated. One of the things that as a technique, as a father, is I really think it's good and beneficial to kind of bring out an environment of a safe place. This is your home. This is your safe place, and everyone's feelings matter. Everyone's opinions matter. And so if your child is, if you find them involved in marijuana use or edibles or any other kind of drug, you're concerned about it. I think taking that approach is one from a safe place, and just simply saying, I'm really concerned. I love you. I care about you. And you're really taking some serious risks, especially when fentanyl is potentially involved. So I really think it's good to get help. So taking it from that angle, I think is going to give you more traction.
Yeah, and just being really forthcoming about, that this drug landscape is like nothing we've ever seen. And, we sometimes when we're talking, the kids it's almost like, you guys, I'm sorry that this is what you guys are up against. You're really the first generation of kids that are up against this, where pill usage is so normalized. And now they're doing this giant switcheroo on you guys, and deceiving you. And so, because we were very engaged with Zach, he knew he'd come and talk to us. We had open conversations about substances. He had two, older siblings that he adored that were great role models. The one piece we didn't know was to talk to him about fentanyl, because we didn't know about these pills and we didn't know about these dealers. So those two pieces, the dealers on social media and fentanyl and counterfeit pills, have to be part of the conversation.
Lori, there's a couple questions that are coming in through the chat over in the live feed. I don't know if you wanted me to bring those.
Yes, I will be addressing those now. Can the panel please speak to InstaTouch overdoses? Is this danger real? We got several of these. Is there such a thing as instant touch overdoses? Mr. Desmond seemed to make a reference to law enforcement being exposed to fentanyl. Can the panel talk about the supposed instant touch overdoses which are being talked about in social media?
Well, I can quickly respond to the situations that I personally experienced in the highway patrol and that I've heard from other law enforcement agencies. Is absolutely just by these officers coming in contact with it, touching it, has resulted in negative health effects and could result in an overdose from what we've been told. I'm certainly not an expert of it, but that's where most of the law enforcement contacts have come from. Captain Wong.
We've been educated about it, and yes, it is true. I mean, fentanyl in the powder form, if it touches your skin is basically, I mean, there's pores, it's where you sweat from, and you can absorb the fentanyl. We haven't here in Sacramento Fire Department encountered any such cases like that, but it's stuff that we do look out for, especially when we go on overdose type calls.
Thank you, Captain Wing. Next question. Are dogs used to sniff out drugs trained to detect fentanyl? U.S. Attorney Talbert, do you have any response to that?
I don't. I'm assuming the answer is yes, but I wonder if our doctor or our crime lab person might know more about the use of dogs and fentanyl detection.
I don't have any specific information about the use of dogs for sniffing out fentanyl. I did want to contribute a little bit about the concept of just touching fentanyl and having that lead to an overdose. Really, the big issue with fentanyl, especially if it's in a powder form, is going to be if it goes airborne and you breathe it in, that inhalation hazard is much more significant than anything being absorbed through your skin. But certainly if you do touch it, that does lead to potential issues with, if you touch your eyes or your mouth or your nose and then getting it absorbed through a more porous mucous membrane. Those are going to be much more significant routes of exposure where overdose is going to be more likely. So those are, again, just kind of the main points of concern there.
Thank you. Next question.
I did recently read that the California Highway Patrol in the Central Valley Merced District made a record-breaking bust of narcotic and fentanyl pills at a stop, and they did cite their canine as being successful with sniffing out those dogs. So again, I can't speak to how they were trained or if they're trained for that, but that was a predominant post from the California Highway Patrol that did give credit to the canine for sniffing out, I believe it was hundreds and thousands of pills in a car. So,
Thank you, Dr. Mendonça. Next question. Is it beneficial for people to carry Narcan in their car or purse just in case? Dr. Mendonça, would you like to respond to that one?
you bet. Yeah, we here in Sacramento County, we are telling our employees to, keep it with them, keep it in their desk drawer, keep it in their bag. One thing to keep in mind, and again, Captain Wang may want to talk on this as well, but, it is sensitive to extreme temperatures. So, the thought about throwing it in your glove box or throwing it in your car, in Sacramento, we do get some significant heat. As you know, we can get up into the hundreds, and inside your car, much hotter than that. And so you want to be sensitive to having your Narcan in extreme heat or extreme cold, because it can affect, according to the labeling on the box. So, for me, I keep a couple in my work bag, so it's always with me, but my work bag never gets super hot. I have some in my home. We tell people to keep it with you at all times. Keep it, anywhere that you're going, in your house, at your work. Just have it available to you, have it accessible to you.
Thank you. Next question for U.S. Attorney Talbert or DA Schubert. How does this epidemic compare to the crack cocaine epidemic of the 80s and 90s in terms of the number of deaths?
I don't have stats on the crack cocaine epidemic. I know obviously there was a major response in federal law at the time to classify crack cocaine separately from powder cocaine and increase penalties substantially at that time, which later, kind of after the big push, were reduced in hindsight. With fentanyl, one of the big pushes now is, and again, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but one of the big pushes now is with respect to fentanyl analogs. So to the extent that substances act exactly like fentanyl, but they aren't exactly fentanyl, then they're still covered by federal law, but the federal law is temporary in nature as far as the scheduling. And so there is discussion of to pass legislation that would make scheduling of fentanyl analogs permanent and expand the number of analogs to cover everything that we're seeing. So this is still, from a legislative perspective, it's still kind of a fast-moving epidemic and one that is still being dealt with. I don't know if Anne Marie, do you have anything in addition to that with respect to crack cocaine?
No, I mean, I would ask if our crime lab supervisor Craig knows the answer to that, just in terms of what maybe they've seen, kind of if there's any trends between the difference between cocaine in our laboratory versus fentanyl.
In terms of what we're seeing currently, definitely fentanyl is it is the kind of the big drug right now. I think maybe trying to reference the question or answer the question of comparing overdose death rates from crack cocaine versus fentanyl now. I think fentanyl is a much bigger problem just due to the nature of, the types of effects that potent synthetic opioids have compared to a stimulant like cocaine.
Thank you.
I think the other, I think the other, kind of obvious difference is that crack cocaine very highly addictive, and so it would lead to kind of long-term deterioration, whereas fentanyl, as we've discussed tonight, is just it's essentially when it's used like this, it's a poison, and it is just taking a chance with your very life. One time, one pill can kill. One time taking it, and so in that way, it's very different. Crack cocaine is rocked up from the powder version, usually by the the last dealer to sell to a user, whereas fentanyl now is, I think a lot of the pills, the counterfeit pills that we're seeing are being manufactured en masse in Mexico and shipped here, so that they are, being transported and sold through the distribution networks, all in their final use form, differing in that way from cocaine too.
Thank you. Next question. What types of collaborative work is being done between counties and cities to support with getting this information out to all community members, parents, and young people? I can respond to that in terms of what's happening here in Sacramento County, especially with the services that we're providing to youth. The county and the city sit on joint work groups and coalitions around the discussion of youth treatment services or youth prevention work. And so there is communication that's going back and forth. And most recently, there was a resource list that was developed with the assistance of both the city staff and the county staff that is posted on our county website. So there's lots of communication that's happening right now between the county and the city.
Lori, if I could just add in on more of kind of a regional basis. I think there's been a significant amount of work done across the state to try for whether it's public safety, whether it's public health, to come together. And to be honest with you, I kind of found out about the problem through learning through one of my colleagues from the Valley of Fresno County. And so I think there's significant similar types of programs going on in other counties where there's collaborations between public health and law enforcement and school districts and everything. It's billboard campaigns, there's PSAs, there's all these things, because I think everybody is seeing it. There's training, lots of training going on for law enforcement, for other folks, educators, parents, everything, because we all know that it's not just a local problem, it's a statewide problem, it's a national problem.
And Lori, if I could jump in and put in a plug that I think you'll appreciate. So in 2019, we joined with our Fresno County counterparts, the DA, sheriff, and police department, and a bunch of other partners to put on an opioid awareness summit on the Fresno State campus, attended by about 250 educators and healthcare professionals, to just make people aware of what the opioid problem was at that time, which seemed overwhelming in 2019 and is much, much worse now. And to tips on, whether it's treatment, prevention, talking with students, those sorts of things, destigmatizing use so that we could have more effective treatment. So we're planning another summit, but here in Sacramento, hopefully later this year. And we're working with Sacramento County and Sacramento County DA and again, all of our counterparts here in Sacramento to put on something similar for, again, educators and healthcare professionals that we hope will kind of get the word out in a large scale. We're really hoping that COVID gets better so we can do it in person like we did in 2019 at Fresno State.
Great, thank you. Next question for District Attorney Schubert. Can you tell us more about the onepillcankill.sac.com campaign? Will the DA's office continue their fentanyl campaign, and what would the next steps look like? What would things look like moving forward?
Well, I think it's going to look a lot like what it is right now, which is, we have this website we've reserved, the resources are found there. We're working obviously with health services and your association and law enforcement. We're working with the school districts. I should have mentioned, and I was reminded that we have a program, our office has a program called iSmart, which is, we teach kids the dangers of social media and things of that nature. So we've added that to that curriculum. But I think the public can expect that we're going to continue on with this mission. We're very grateful to the county for helping fund this, because that is a very big deal to, it's one thing to get social media and to do all that work on social media, but when you're able to actually fund that and have, PSAs that are done, we have billboard campaigns. I mean, that does take resources. So I think everybody understands the magnitude of it, and we're all committed to moving it forward. I'm sure that maybe Supervisor Desmond or Kennedy can tell us they're going to continue funding this for us.
Well,
I'll pose the next-
I'll comment on that if that's okay. Since, yeah, you know, your Sacramento County Board of Supervisors is extremely supportive of the fentanyl campaign efforts, and we're very proud of this partnership. And as soon as we heard from DA Schubert at a board meeting, our DHS, Department of Health Services, led by Siobhan, kicked into gear, lent $100,000 to the effort, to this awareness campaign effort, and I know the board will continue supporting it. I'm told right now staff is working on another proposal that you'll be bringing to the board, Siobhan, and I know we're preparing for our budget season coming up, and as far as I'm concerned, I will certainly be looking for opportunities how we can continue supporting your efforts.
Thank you, Supervisor Desmond, and thank you for the county's support in this effort. Next question to Dr. Andrew Mendonca. How can people get help for substance use and mental health challenges? What services are available in Sacramento County?
I am proud to be in the leadership team in Sacramento County Behavioral Health Services. And what I can tell you is that our department is a very robust department of resources and services, both on the mental health and within substance abuse and co-occurring. So that, again, issues that if you're struggling with both substance abuse and mental health issues, I'll put the link in the chat of how to access services through Sacramento County. If you have Medi-Cal or if you're uninsured, we certainly can help you out. If you have commercial insurance, so like insurance through your work, so like Kaiser, Aetna, Cigna, go ahead and flip that card on the back, and there should be a number for your insurance company. Feel free to reach out to them. They should be able to link you up with some services. But I will go ahead and put a link in the chat of how to directly access mental health and substance abuse services within Sacramento County by just picking up the phone or going to a provider and getting services directly from them. So we make it very, very easy in Sacramento County. It's a system I'm proud to represent. We basically believe in the no wrong door approach. So no matter where you go or how you go into our system, it's the right way to get services. So I will put some information in the chat for everybody to access.
Thank you. And I'll pose another question to you, Dr. Mendonca. For those individuals that are currently using substances, is the county partnering with harm reduction organizations?
We are proud to be partnering with several harm reduction entities and organizations. We're looking to how to get Narcan out to the community, how to get fentanyl testing strips out there, how to get the word out. You know, we're trying to destigmatize this as much as we can. Our goal is to get out there. If you're going to use safely. There's ways to use safely. They're having Narcan on hand, having somebody as the chaperone. There's a lot of harm reduction behavior and techniques that can be used. No matter where you are in your decision to either stop using drugs or to continue to use drugs, there are resources out there for you. And so I'll put a flyer and some other information in the chat as well, that how to access our harm reductions partners throughout Sacramento County.
Thank you. Just a few more questions. Next question to U.S. Attorney Talbert, or any of the panel members, if you have any knowledge about this. Are we seeing fentanyl in marijuana and vape products?
So I've asked that question of our federal partners, DEA and the HIDA, the High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area, which runs a number of task forces, drug task forces in 12 of our counties. And they're saying, while there have been reports in the media of that most of them are either false or a result of cross-contamination of drugs being transported together. There's one that was called to my attention where there was marijuana that was laced with fentanyl, but I guess the word back was that the vast majority of fentanyl that is being seized is either powder or pill form, counterfeit pill form, and that accounts for almost all of what's being seen. I know we heard from the local lab representative here that they're seeing some with methamphetamine, heroin, and cocaine, but we're not seeing it at the federal level. We're not seeing it with marijuana. And if I could just add, I just checked, and so we charged. This is on another question. We just charged a case today, a traffic stop on I-5 in Fresno County. A couple of individuals were transporting 300,000 counterfeit pills containing fentanyl. And as part of the traffic stop, the officers ran a drug detection dog. So yes, dogs are being used, drug detection dogs are being used with respect to fentanyl too.
Thank you. Next question to District Attorney Schubert. Can you speak to Senate Bill 350 and the impact of it not passing?
So for the folks that are still listening, there's a bill by Senator Melendez out of Riverside that would require in court what we call an advisement. The Didiers are very aware of it, so I'm sure if I make some misstep, they're going to correct me, hopefully. But essentially, it's an advisement to somebody if they are prosecuted for crimes that involve fentanyl, that should you choose to sell or distribute fentanyl and that kills somebody, then you can be prosecuted for a higher crime than the manslaughter that they could otherwise. So you could conceivably get a murder. It's like a similar, we call it what's called a Watson advisement. It's similar to what happens when somebody is arrested for drunk driving and convicted of drunk driving. The judges now will give them that advisement. Oftentimes it's in writing. What I would say is that it was a big disappointment that the legislature did not pass it from a public safety perspective. I know that many of the families testified. I think if my memory's right, the Didiers testified, and they obviously chime in on that. But from a perspective of the DA perspective, is we do those advisements. We don't have to have a law that allows us to do it, but it would be a very helpful law that it would encourage all counties to do this, so that people really understand that the consequences of fentanyl and fentanyl distribution. So.
Thank you. And a couple of final questions here for the evening. Any final thoughts from our county supervisors, Supervisor Kennedy, Supervisor Desmond, in terms of county support moving forward?
Just that we're going to continue to make this a priority. This is not something that's going to go away. And you know, the comparison was made to crack cocaine, and you know, I was on the streets of Oak Park in the late 80s when crack cocaine first came to Sacramento. And as insidious as a drug as it was, and as addictive as it is, this sounds odd, but it's not as deadly. What the U.S. Attorney just said, as far as the bust in Fresno County, you know, that's enough to kill 400,000 people in one load. And with, you know, as we've heard today, it's like playing Russian roulette with 3 bullets to 4 bullets in the chamber. You know, we haven't seen anything quite like this, and the county is going to take it very seriously. I am committing, and I've spoken with the district attorney to work with our local universities and to get that word out and make sure that education is happening at our K-12 and our university level. So thank you for doing this today.
Thank you. And any final thoughts from Laura and Chris Didier?
I just want to, again, from a grieving family perspective, just thank our community for rallying around this issue. We know so many local families that have been impacted, beautiful, you know, young people, boys and girls, you know, like we've said, it doesn't discriminate. And it's been very hard when we came into this, and were thrust into this a year ago. There wasn't all of this awareness. You know, Zach was tragically one of the kind of the earlier victims when we were seeing this big rise. So we're very grateful to everyone here, and we've gotten to know other DAs in other counties that are also working very strongly on this. And we will have people reach out with their condolences and their support, and it means a lot. So thank you so much.
I also wanted to say again, thanks for everyone who are here, the participants and those viewers watching. No one's life should be measured by the circumstances of their death. everyone's life is worth far more than that. And we don't want to distance ourselves from a person who's struggling for substance use disorder when they're trying to, get past their struggle with heroin or cocaine and not realize that someone put fentanyl in their product and they died as well. They're just as big of a, or as much of a victim. So taking action is our antidote to despair and getting the word out, messaging and participating in awareness in all fronts, in all different possible ways. After the first KCRA report went out, we were approached by 3 families we didn't know, and they told us that having watched that story, they shared it with their child and surprised those parents. That child surprised those parents that, hey, I actually just bought something out Snapchat, and it shocked the parents. And 2 of those stories turned out to be with lethal fentanyl. Had they not seen that story, Zach's story, they probably would have died. So I firmly believe sharing our story, just getting the word out and communicating is saving lives out there. It's hard to measure it, but the awareness and the education tool is the biggest tool in our tool bag, and all of these kinds of efforts and collaborative efforts is a really important part of that. So thank you again.
Thank you. So we're coming to the end of our event, and in closing, you have heard tonight there is no warning to fentanyl exposure. These conversations are the warning to take action. So it's important for all of us to be informed, be aware, and be safe. I would like to thank our panelists, our viewers, and acknowledge the precious lives lost to fentanyl poisoning and overdose. And certainly our condolences go out to Laura and Chris Didier and other parents and family members for your deep loss and the tragedy of losing your loved ones. The transcript tonight of the question and answer period and all of the resources referenced and provided tonight will be available on the One Pill Can Kill Sacramento SAC.com website. So thank you for joining us and have a good evening.